All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, June 20th. This is our City Council regular meeting. I'll have our city clerk start with our roll call.
Mayor Kelly Clark,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Amy Lamb,
Here.
Councilmember Karen Howe,
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen,
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Ratuja Indapure,
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which
Just trying to see who has their land acknowledgement out, if anyone has that open. Deputy Mayor Lamb?
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Great, thank you. First up, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, then first up, we have public comment. And the two public hearings will do a separate public comment on those individually. So this one is just the general one that we will start with. I'm waiting to see if there's anyone. Awesome. Is it Arjun? How do you say it? Arjun? Yes, please go ahead. Up at the podium here, and then I'll have like a 3-minute timer if you'll just state your name and your city. Thank you. And then I think the microphone's on.
Hello. Dear City Council members, my name is Arjun Mandadi. First off, thank you for giving me the time to express my concerns as the student body president-elect of Skyline High School. I'm here to address a concern regarding the safety of Skyline High School students. Every day, hundreds of students cross the southeast 8th Street east of 228th Avenue from their vehicle at the Sammamish Lutheran Church to Skyline High School and vice versa. Due to their circumstances, whether it is convenience, time, and or due to weather, the majority of students cross mid-block the 3-lane road before and after school. Last school year, we had an officer employed by the district and that would help direct traffic at that exact location. This year, unfortunately, we do not have the same help, and a permanent solution would be beneficial. I have a proposal in front of the City Council and seek the support of the Transportation Department to help mitigate the risks for students and greatly improve the safety. The proposal is to install a mid-block signalized crosswalk. Using the 3 lanes that Southeast 8th Street has, the city could place a refuge island in the center and then flashing lights on both sides so that all directions of traffic are aware that someone is crossing. I'm going to take a moment to paraphrase how students that constantly cross feel about the current situation that the location is in right now. They feel as if it is dangerous at times, and they must time their crossing correctly. One student spoke about how they have to trust that cars are going the speed limit and hope that they see you despite it being a 20 miles per hour zone during school hours. I've also spoken to students that have had close calls with vehicles going through that location with 4 different directions. I've done my homework and have answers to possible questions that this project may receive. The first one is, why don't these students cross at the intersection by 228th? It is inconvenient to walk that extra approximately 900 feet, according to Google Maps, to get to the location that students can go through in less than 50 feet with a crosswalk. Other high schools, such as Sammamish High School, Newport High School, and the list goes on, have crosswalks similar to the one that I'm proposing, despite being within a few hundred feet of a major intersection that already has a crosswalk. Even within Sammamish, schools like Pine Lake Middle School and Pacific Cascade Middle School have them too. There's another concern that you could have about, like, what about cars coming up the hill that don't have enough stopping distance because of the visibility and gradient that is low? Well, similar to what Pacific Cascade Middle School did, a signalized crosswalk would flash so that cars coming up the hill would be able to see that students are crossing. Even signs that say crosswalk ahead would remove the concern from being an issue to the implementation of a crosswalk. We must stay proactive rather than reactive so that students are safe and we don't act after something bad has happened. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else for regular public comment? All right, we will move to online.
If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand. If calling by phone, press *9. If you wish to speak at a public hearing, the public hearing will be later in the meeting. This is general public comment. I will promote our first caller. Mary Wichter.
Hi, good evening. This is Mary Wichter, Sammamish for 23 years. I wanted to bring up something that I've emailed about because I hope it will be broadcast more widely. And I know, thank you, Ratuja Indipuri, council member, for also copying our city manager, Scott McCall. Recently, we all got our little property tax notices from King County. It was nice to see that the amount had gone, the valuations of the houses and the property had gone down a little bit, but it's still higher than it was for the last 3 years. So I wanted to bring up, I had done some research recently because I know taxes are hard to pay, especially if you're on fixed income or older. And I did learn that King County has a senior tax exemption for people that make about $58,000 to about $68,000. There are some categories, and if you can qualify for the exemption, all you have to do is just put in an application online by July 1st of this year. And if you do qualify, you could potentially qualify for exemption for the last 3 years. And the reason that that's important is because the valuations have gone up so much and your taxes are based on that. If you can go back to a 2020 value and did qualify, what that does is it freezes your property values then. So even if they increase, you wouldn't get the increase. And if they do go lower, you would get them to go lower. And that freeze is important because you also wouldn't have to pay extra levies like for schools or for bonds, that sort of thing. So it might really help people. And in my experience with doing advocacy for things for over a decade, a lot of the people who need to qualify or could qualify, they just usually don't know about it. So I think this is the really important time just because the markets and the prices and the valuations have been so unusual to let people know. And then if you're at the higher value at about $68,000, there is a deferral for property taxes. It's not quite as good as the exemption, but it allows you to defer. I think you have to pay the first half of your taxes, and then the second half you can receive up to 25%. The types of people that can qualify are seniors, and they categorize that as age 61. You can also be 60, and then there's 57 if you happen to be a widow or a widower, if you're disabled or if you're a veteran with service disability. So I think it's just so important. I don't have Facebook, I'm not online, but I don't know how to get the message out. But I think this year it's particularly important to highlight it for the people who might be able to qualify and benefit. And if there's any other programs, there are some house repair programs and things I've run into recently online. So those things, I don't know how to send those into the city or the best conduit. So if you'd let me know, I would try to do that. Otherwise, I'm hoping anybody who might hear this today, follow-up that the city would do through communications and our city council or planning commission would help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other public commenters. Back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. So next up, we have the consent calendar. I will entertain a motion unless we have any discussions or questions.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty. So first up, we have our very first public hearing. I think we have Audrey coming on, so I can wait a second till she gets on here.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. This is the second reading for our 2024-2029 Transportation Improvement Plan. This is the fourth meeting for our TIP this calendar year. So joining us this evening and presenting is Doug McIntyre, the city's Senior Transportation Planning Manager, as well as Lindsay Channing, the city's Transportation Planner. So very excited to present our final TIP for your discussion and hopefully adoption this evening. And Doug and Lindsay, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Let me share my screen really quickly. All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. For the record, Lindsay Channing, Transportation Planner for the City of Sammamish. This evening is as our Director said, our fourth meeting on the Transportation Improvement Plan for 2024-2029. This evening, I'd like to very briefly give a recap and purpose, review the changes and things that we looked at moving in to this meeting since our June 6th meeting that also included the public hearing that is still open this evening. And then we would move into your public hearing, closing it, and then potential council adoption. So this evening, after discussion, we'd ask that you close your public hearing, review the updated draft, and then move forward with adoption as recommended by staff. For a recap, as mentioned earlier, this was before council 3 times prior, beginning back in April 18th, where we gave an introduction and overview of our plans moving forward for the TIP this year. We held a workshop on May 16th and then opened and started the public hearing on June 6th. We did receive 1 verbal comment during the public hearing on June 6th by a member of the public, and we did receive 1 written public comment as of 5 p.m. today. That was sent to the council as a whole and also to the clerk's office, so it is part of the record. As far as our revised draft, based on the discussion held during the June 6th meeting, staff and city leadership are recommending the following. So we were asked to take a look at TR 18, which is the Southeast 8th Street, the Southeast 218th, 217th, and 216th avenues. And this project was unfunded on the TIP this year, and staff is recommending that this remain unfunded to stay consistent with the priority criteria that we have in place and was directed by council. And also planning decisions need to be made to the Beaton Hill Park area prior to investing city funds into temporary solutions in that area. The second item in regards to the TIP this year is the last time you saw it, we had TR 108 Englewood Hill Road Sidewalk Gap Project showing as partial funded on the TIP. Just after we had the public hearing on June 6th, we did receive notification that we did not receive the grant that we applied for this project. And as such, it is now unfunded. And so we have removed the funding from the TIP for this project and also from the project and program guide. With that, we ask that you continue the public hearing and close it this evening, that you review and go through the resolution that was included as Exhibit 1 and move to adopt it. If adopted, we will then transmit it to the Washington State Department of Transportation as required prior to July 1st of this year. Thank you, and any questions?
And Lindsay, if I got that right, council has opportunity to ask questions before I close it. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, for the sidewalk gap project on Englewood Hill Road, how much was the grant going to be for?
That one, so thank you, Councilmember Stewart, Doug McIntyre here. That one, I believe we requested a range of funding, if I recall correctly. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. It was for design and construction, and I believe it was for under $1 million. So that I could dig up the specifics on that.
And where exactly on Englewood Hill Road is that gap that we were going to fill? Is that the one kind of over by where the apartments and things are?
Yeah, it's on the north side of Englewood Hill Road, roughly between 213th and 216th.
Okay, because I ran the numbers, right, based on what is currently showing up for the 6 years against the budget, the revenue assumptions that you guys had. And there was almost $1 million more in revenue than in what we were planning to spend. And so I'm curious if we really have to punt that entire project completely just because we didn't get the grant this time around, or can we still get started on it and try again later? The sidewalk gap projects to me are pretty important, right? I mean, they often pose safety issues, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at the exhibit, and this is our 4th priority project in that category. So I think the idea was to try to adhere to those priorities. And so while it is high, it is something that we were counting on the grant funding for. I mean, we can certainly talk about adding projects. I just think that we would want to understand if there were, additions to the project list, if that affects the allocations that are already shown in Exhibit 2, just to make sure that the funding is adequately there and being applied to the highest priority projects.
And that's fair, but you also don't have, if I read everything correctly, we're assuming, like when you show the numbers, there's an assumption of 0 grants, like that, the grant funding wasn't in the calculation, right? You just took the REIT and the impact fees as the funds, and then here's what we're going to spend. So I guess I'm kind of confused why not getting a grant would pull something off the list completely when that grant funding wasn't part of the assumption to begin with.
So I think, council member, if I may, I think the reason that this was pulled, even though grant funding wasn't part of how we allocated and calculated the numbers within the TIP, we did know that a grant was had been applied for it. And so this was one of those instances where it was a project that was out of priority, if you will, with the asterisks, right? And because we had applied, if we received the grant, it was something that we needed to move forward with, just like other projects that we have received
I see.
grant on.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Thank you. In light of public comment tonight with the Skyline High School crosswalk, and that's TR 117, I know we have it unfunded and it's like number 12 on our list. But in light of that, I'd like to if we could speak to that project. I know it's kind of on there as in the future years, 800,000 future years. And of course, speaking as a parent who has a teen at Skyline herself, and I see those teens when they cross Southeast 8th, and it is enough to make you hold your breath for a moment. What is the likelihood of anything happening there anytime soon? Or is there any grant opportunities for such projects, et cetera, would you think?
Yeah, I can take that. Thank you, Councilmember O'Farrell. This is definitely a tricky one. As you point out, it is a safety issue. The crosswalk at 228, as was mentioned in the public comment, is the ideal way for students to travel. Having effectively a redundant sidewalk is not something that is a high priority for us in the 6-year TIP. But as you mentioned, it is a safety issue. We are aware of the issue. We know that the school resource officer is out there in the mornings helping with students crossing at that point. It is something that we think also that we need to talk to the school district about. We want to make sure that they are partners in any endeavor that we have for that. So it's something that we want to keep it on the radar, but we also want to be diligent about investing into the high priority projects.
Yeah, I think it's worth talking to the school because there may have been changes about the resource officer that's there. I'm not sure if they are out there when the kids are crossing coming in the morning. So I think it's worth kind of figuring that out now, if there's been a change in that situation. And if there are any grants, is there anything that maybe comes to the school district? Do they contribute in any way to making passage into the school safer? I mean, I know the principal has talked many times about it to the student body, but I just wonder if we've got other opportunities to discover funding and kind of make so that project maybe could rise in our priority. I'm not trying to like skip the queue or in any way, but I just wonder if maybe it warrants some further attention.
Yeah, definitely. We are always looking for grant opportunities. So that is something that the TIP helps us to do. So once projects are on the list, we are able to, identify grant opportunities for them. However, again, we want to make sure we're adhering to the priorities and making sure that we go to grant funders with really competitive projects. As you might imagine, it's been very competitive for grant dollars these days. And what we're seeing is kind of a larger shift towards some of the bigger projects in the region. So it has been hard sometimes to compete, but it is something that we still do want to do and make sure that we're competitive. So yes, absolutely, we will always be looking for opportunities to fund these projects.
Okay, all right, thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Hi, thank you for all the work that you guys have done on TR 18. I know there's been a lot of discussions on some possible solutions. I understand that if we were to do anything, it would have to happen on the Beaton Hill side. So I'm just trying to find kind of this middle ground where we could do something that isn't going to cost a lot of money. Like, I don't know if part of the discussion included just cutting the bushes back. I don't know if that's part of it, a discussion. Or
we actually, yeah, thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. We did talk to our parks team. We've had several meetings since we last came to council on June 6th. So we've had a few internal meetings with Audrey, myself, and Lindsay, and then we've also talked to Scott as well as our parks director, Anjali, to try to make sure that we're really looking at every option and making sure that no stone is left unturned. And so one of the things that Anjali Meyer did tell us about the kind of vegetation in that area is that they are significant rhododendron bushes. And so that is something that they're looking at as part of their parks plan. And, from a transportation standpoint, ideally you'd have a grade separation, you'd have a curb separating the vehicular traffic from the pedestrian traffic. And so if it's at the same grade and just kind of pushed off to the side, that would be potentially a safety issue as well. We want to make sure that we're separating the pedestrians as much as possible from vehicular flow. And so if we did have something temporary, it might encourage people to walk, which would make sense. But we also want to make sure that it's a safe walking path. And then, of course, as we wrote in the written response, we want to make sure that we're investing the public dollars effectively and not having to undo or redo work, even if it is temporary. Partly because the temporary solutions do also require a level of engineering. As we talked about internally, even a gravel path would require adherence to the stormwater code, which would mean engineering. And so it would be a lot more nuanced than just kind of clearing a little bit of a path. So we did look into that, and we just want to make sure that we're investing the dollars appropriately.
so I understand that, and I understand that, you talk about it has to adhere to like stormwater codes, et cetera. And you just mentioned safety as well, that there needs to be some sort of separation between where people are walking and traffic. But right now, people are literally walking in the street. So I don't understand. So, I would think that the current situation is still more dangerous than if we were to make some sort of path. So I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out here, is that is truly a safety issue. When I go out there and I spend, just 20 minutes on a Sunday, and I see people walking in the street. I can walk on the shoulder, and cars are having to cross over the center line to avoid me. So I don't know where else in Sammamish this situation happens, but this is leading to a park, and people are going to that park from the town center area. And we promote parks. We are promoting walking, through our climate action plan, and just in general to get people out of their cars. So I'm trying to find this balance between not spending a lot of money, not having to undo something. Like, there just has to be something.
It may be an Anjali question, Scott. I don't know if we can just set something up in a few, because obviously we're not going to buy a curb gutter sidewalk for this tip, but it might be an Anjali thing to chat more about. It sounds like obviously staff already has, but.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If I may, we did chat with the Parks team as well. I think one of the pieces that Doug was alluding to is that it's not just the initial part of it, or just a gravel pathway. It has to meet ADA requirements. It has to be graded correctly. It has to meet the public works standards. We have to drain for stormwater, and we also then take on extra liability other than just the roadway itself. So it's not an insignificant cost issue. I think the question will always be, because we're at a bit of a zero-sum game, if you will, in terms of projects, that if we take one on, that means something else we have to trade off. And I think that's where what you're kind of hearing from the TIP team anyway is things have been prioritized and identified, and dollars have been allocated. And if council chooses to change that, we're obviously willing to participate and amend the plan accordingly. We can continue to work with the Parks Department to see what might be available, but that's what we are faced with, is once the city touches it to improve it, we have to meet our standards. And it's not possible for us to just sort of clear a path, if you will. I think that's what we bump into.
So could we remove this project from the TIP, approve the rest of the TIP? Yeah.
I mean, we can, like I said, we can continue to work. It'd probably be more of a parks to look at what the cost might be to do something. But again, it's not as simple as I think any of us would like it to be, to just go in there and put in some version of a pathway.
Okay.
Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So number one is where is the funding coming from for the connection project number one for 2027, 2028, 2029?
Those are REIT and TIP dollars. Excuse me, REIT and TIP dollars. We are assuming no other funding in the TIP.
Second question, thank you, Doug. Second question is on that Belvedere, the Beaver Lake Drive to Belvedere Way. Can you just help me clarify which direction am I going? Am I going from the park all the way around Beaver Lake Drive to Belvedere, or am I coming from some other direction and then going to Belvedere Way? What?
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Councilmember Treen. And just for clarification, you're referencing TR 49, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that would start at the Belvedere Way barricade between Beaver Lake Drive and Belvedere Way, and then would go north around the lake, all the way ending at the park at 24th Street.
And so are there any intended or unintended consequences by doing that project, if approved on this TIP?
Yeah, I believe there's always intended or unintended consequences to all the decisions. We are not showing funding on this project for the 6 years. but it is something that we want to keep on the radar. But just to clarify, it is not being funded in the 6 years. Yeah, there very likely could be unintended consequences. I don't know if I have any off the top of my head.
Can I ask you if there would be one that the gate there would be opened up?
Yeah, that would be right. That would be part of the project. Yeah, that would be a connection being made from Belvedere Way to Beaver Lake Drive.
So when I'm looking at connectivity in the city, within this plan, this TIP plan, one of the connectivity issues here, unintended consequences would be the opening of the gate at Belvedere. Is that what I'm understanding you to say? It's a possibility.
Right, that is part of the scope, correct.
Okay, thank you. So kind of running on the same line as Councilmember Lamb was headed on safety, is there, which project on this list is a solution for the Parkway and specifically at the Sammamish Landing?
I'm not sure if I understand the question completely. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, so East Lake Sammamish Parkway is only being addressed in one TIP item that I'm aware of. But I could be wrong, so I'm just wondering if there is a solution being proposed that would address the safety issue on the Parkway at the Sammamish Landing, at the north end of the city.
Correct, yeah. So the project TR-04 is further south on the Parkway, and it would not have any impact on the landing area.
So then the answer is there is no project that is a solution for what's going on at Sammamish Landing currently.
Right, not on the tip, yeah.
Okay, when I look at exiting the city at the south end of the city, is there any project besides the Southeast 40th, which is a concurrency project, is there any other project that would address some of the solutions to a challenge if Issaquah School District was to build a new high school?
The main project is the that you referenced, Southeast 40th and 228th intersection improvement there. If the school project were to be approved by the city of Issaquah at the Providence Heights campus, they would be required to mitigate for their impacts to the system, including frontage improvements as well. But the city would not have a capital project for that, if that makes sense. That would be funded by the school district.
Could the city then require that the Issaquah High School pay for the improvements all the way up to the Pine Lake Issaquah Road intersection?
Not likely. There's Supreme Court precedents for, they call it rough proportionality and nexus. So you need to make sure that the impact to the system is proportional to the exaction that you get from the developer, and it needs to be a clear nexus. So you would be able to mitigate for their direct impacts to the system, which would be done through the development review process, but you are not likely to be able to get more than what their direct impact is.
Right, unless they change the direction in which they're drawing kids, instead of drawing them from South Cove up the hill, if they were drawing them actually from Sammamish down the hill, then there would definitely be a need or a nexus, as you have referred to. So I agree, thank you, that works. The other one, when I look at a TIP project, is there anything on the TIP project that would be some kind of coordination with the with the city of Issaquah to address the choke point at the south end of the city on Issaquah Pine Lake Road?
So the project, I'm just looking at my spreadsheet off to the side here to make sure I get the right number. Give me a second here. It would be project TR-27 in the regional category. So that is the third phase, the planned third phase to the whole corridor of Issaquah Pine Lake Road, and it begins at the city's south boundary at 48 and goes to the intersection of Issaquah Falls City Road. So the city of Issaquah that is the jurisdiction in that gap, which is why it's in the regional category. We have talked to the city of Issaquah about this in the past, both through our TMP efforts back in 2019, as well as through commentary on their TMP efforts back in 2020. And so we have had conversations about that. My understanding is that the city of Issaquah has it as not a high priority project. I believe it's identified as a medium priority project. So the answer is yes, we have had conversations, but I do not believe that there is any funding for that at the moment.
Thank you, Doug. And then, of course, I mean, we have to look at the two other, well, I guess there's three, but I'm just going to mention two of them right now. So the roundabout at SR 202 and Sahali Way would be one that's not funded with any dollars. And then the dangerous road right now is 244th. The dangerous part obviously is in unincorporated King County, but is there any, in a 6-year plan, is there any funding that the city of Sammamish is planning to address that, use to address that issue?
So no, they are not identified for funding, partly because they're out of our jurisdiction. But we have had conversations. We know that the WashDOT has been studying that intersection that you mentioned, which is shown as TR19 in our regional projects category. Those types of projects definitely start with partnerships first, between staff and elected officials of the different jurisdictions. So in this case, with that intersection, it'd be King County, it'd be WashDOT, it'd be us, Redmond, everybody.
Yeah.
And similarly with the 244th project, that one is actually not on the regional projects list. WashDOT has started that project. They delayed construction of it. They, I believe, delayed it till start next year. And so we have been in conversation with them. I know that our traffic team and development review, city engineer, everybody has been in conversation with WashDOT. And so that project is, my understanding, and I hope I don't mischaracterize it, but my understanding is that it is funded. It's just been delayed. So that one should be moving, I believe, beginning next year.
Doug, I just want to thank you and the staff for just being straight, honest, and transparent about what is on this tip. And I do appreciate all the work and effort, and definitely enjoy working with the staff and with Councilmember Howe on the ETP. And so thank you for all the work you guys are doing on this tip. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
Councilmember Howe?
To follow up on Councilmember Treen for just a second, I'm also interested in that 202 roundabout, and I know it's outside of our jurisdiction, and I know that you guys are in touch with appropriate parties. Is there anything else we can do to show our continued interest in pushing that forward that doesn't involve necessarily setting aside funding for it? Is it something that the council members can do? Is there opportunity? And I'm not suggesting you have an answer for that right this second, but as you think about it, and something occurs to you, it'd be really helpful, because Councilmember Treen and I would link arms and go down to WashDOT or to Redmond and just, or to whoever, and continue to kind of talk and make friends and partner and all that good stuff, just to keep it alive. Because a lot of times sometimes it's just making sure that people understand that we're sincerely interested in getting that project promoted forward, and maybe talking to a legislator or two at the right time. So just let me know if there's things that we can do. The other question I have has to do with TR 126, which is the Northeast Connector Road. And I know that you've been in close contact with the school district about their plans in that area, and I would just like to understand, how is Eastside Catholic responding?
I don't know if I have an answer to that one. I think I might look to Audrey. Is that okay?
Yeah, and just for clarification, Councilmember Howe, TR 126 is the Northeast Connector Road, and so not necessarily Crusader Way, which is TR 125.
There is talk about, however, encroaching onto Eastside Catholic for town center. And so I thought this project might touch that. It doesn't at all?
I can
Is it
pull up the
125?
maps. That should be 125.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, did you have a question, Karen? Sorry.
Well,
I think
know
you're
that
like TR 125.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it has to do with just Eastside Catholic, just making sure that they are part of the, not just part of the discussion, but really feeling like they're a partner in that discussion. Because they have felt apparently that discussions have been taking place without them necessarily at the table. And I know that that's not your intent. I know that.
Yeah, our intent is to continue to partner with all of the schools. We meet on a regular basis just for simpler things like bell times and coordinating capital projects. But there's certainly, we want to continue that relationship as we talk about some of these bigger efforts in terms of the connector roads and different things like that. So that will be a continued effort, ongoing effort, and require many more meetings and discussions. But we will look forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have our city manager talk, I think, to both your points, probably. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't mean to belabor this, but Councilmember Howe, I appreciate what you're saying. I do think, for instance, when we received the Lake Washington application, one of the first things we did is to set up a meeting with Eastside Catholic to talk about what the application was and was not, and to start that conversation, because to your point, that is critically important. They're an important part of Town Center, and we intend to keep all parties in Town Center involved as we move forward to try to find solutions to make sure it's the best sort of setup we can get.
Councilmember Napure?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one, actually, I'm a little, I don't have an answer. So I think Councilmember Treen mentioned the Sammamish Landing safety issue. I'm not aware of any safety issues, so I was wondering if the city manager could either take that and let us know what that was, because I wasn't aware of any.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I'm actually going to look to Councilmember Treen to maybe help clarify, because I'm not aware of a traffic safety issue in the Sammamish Landing area at the moment. I'd be happy to be educated, though.
Well, we've had several public commenters come in and talk about some of the dangers that have happened down at Sammamish Landing. We also know that I've witnessed it myself as far as people speeding through a 30-mile-an-hour zone where there's a crosswalk, though there are flashing lights there. But with the parking lot in the summer months coming up, we've seen this on a number of occasions where the police are having to go out there and monitor that. I've seen personally coming home the people just opening their car doors into the roadway and getting out of their car with children and blow up boards, the exercise boards. And so it's not a safe situation. That issue has been brought up. I've brought that issue up to the Parks Department. I've addressed that with the directors to ask if we can get a more permanent solution for the parkway in the future. And there's been no desire by, at least it seems to me, there seems to be no desire right now by this council or even the council before to address that issue. Well, we restriped it, but that was to me, that seemed like a temporary solution that hasn't solved the issue for the long term. So there's definitely some safety issues at the landing as someone who commutes that way 5 days a week, both going and coming home. So we could just reduce the speed. That would help make it a safer place. And then put in bike lanes instead of allowing cars to be parking there. So there's some simple solutions there, but we don't do that right now, and that's not the policy. So right now it's an unsafe situation. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councilmember. Thank you. I know over the years there's been a lot of investment down at that spot, as you point out, to put in the center median and the flashing crosswalk and to lower the speeds. And we're always happy to take a look again at what it looks like. I know in terms of speed lowering, also when you transition from one speed zone into another, there has to be a relative scale of, I'm told, I'm speaking way out of my lane here for our traffic engineer, but that yeah, exactly, pun intended. That transition is, if it goes from a high level down to a low level too fast, that it doesn't work very well. So I know that there's been a lot of work put in down there to try to make it a safer situation, but we're always willing to continue to look at that as situations arise.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Sorry, I have to come back to TR 18 again before we close this out. Can we get some numbers on the different options? Like, what is the lowest cost option that meets our standards? Like, I'm hearing that it does cost a lot of money, but I'd like to know like exactly how much that would be. And I say that in reference to the Lewis Tightline project. As that did start out as a stormwater project, that is now a $3 million project, and is there funds that could be moved out of that project? And I understand that there is a priority list and there is priority rankings. But if we were to decouple this project from A and B, and we're just doing one segment, is that truly a corridor improvement project? Would that shift it to the safety and non-motorized improvement project? And if that's the case, wouldn't the priority ranking change?
I'm happy to expand on that. Oh, go ahead.
No, you take first run and then I'll follow up.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lamb. I just wanted to clarify really quick that the Lewis Thompson Road Tightline project is actually $3.4 million from the 340 fund. So those are just the non-motorized improvements. There's another many millions that are actually funding that project from the stormwater side from 438 funds. So just wanted to clarify that really quickly. And in terms of cost, it takes resources and time to put together costs. And part of what goes into that is looking at the width that we would need to require to make the improvements, making sure that we have the right of way available, making sure that we can grade that even for a very simple path. There's utilities, vertical utilities that are present that would need to be relocated, mailboxes, all of those different things that may have to move even just for pedestrian improvements. So there's quite a bit that goes into it. The Lewis Thompson project, I'd have to look at the overall distances, but that might offer some comparables because the stormwater fund was taking care of the rest of those improvements, and that 3.4 million is just the non-motorized and some of the paving work that's being done for that entire road.
So if we cut through Beaton Hill, though, isn't that less of an issue?
Well,
and then we'd have to go to Anjali.
So believe it or not, on this one, we're slightly ahead of you. I did ask, and the park staff has already pulled together at least some thoughts about what we might be able to do in the shorter term. What I don't have yet are relative costs about what that would look like to try to do something that sort of bridges that gap. Either way, I guess for tonight's conversation, I would say from a TIP perspective, I would ask that we continue on with it not being underfunded, and we'll look at what we might be able to do through the park side and using Beaton Hill off the right of way, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you.
All right, Council, anything else before we close this? All right. I'm closing the public hearing. Oh, we still have, I thought we did this last week. We have to do it again. Okay, my bad. Dave.
Good evening, council members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment briefly on your TIP. First of all, I live in Providence Point, and some of your newer members may be scratching their heads wondering what's the guy from Issaquah doing talking to the Sammamish City Council. Well, specifically to TR 54, which improves significantly at the intersection of Southeast 40th and 228th, is actually going to help our residents at Providence Point. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the board at Providence Point, and so that's why I'm here to tell you that that will improve the lives of many of our residents who use that, our egress from Providence Point on Providence Point Drive Southeast, which is just a little bit north of 40th. A lot of us use that intersection a lot, and your TR 54 is going to help us a lot. So thank you very much for doing that. And I just wanted to reiterate, I don't want to reiterate all my comments in the written remarks that I made to you the other day, but I do want to thank the staff, particularly Mr. McIntyre, for reaching out to me and allowing me to put that comment in late. But also to Deputy Mayor Lamb for her response to my comments on a government holiday, no less. Thank you very much. And clarifying what's going on south of Northeast 40th, and that's really on the school district. And if that project gets built, and that's a big if, and I want to emphasize maybe for some of the members of the public listening, that project is now estimated to be $100 million over the original cost estimate. And that would, if somehow they're managed to magically get that amount, the cost for that single high school will be just a hair over $250 million. That's a billion with a B. So wrap your heads around that. And then, you know, Councilmember Treen has also already commented about what happens south of 40th if that project gets built, and also what happens north of there, which is going to be a huge bottleneck for not only our residents, but for yours going up and down southeast, or excuse me, 228th Avenue Southeast. So again, thank you very much for your work on this TIP. I think it's wonderful, and thanks very much for your continued work.
Thank you. Debbie?
Good evening, everybody. Debbie Treen, and I've been in Sammamish since 2010. My husband and I bought our house in 2010. The main reason we bought it, believe it or not, was because it was affordable. It was completely run down and a complete mess, but we thought we could fix it, and we bought it anyway. The first thing we did was make an appointment with the city and talk to the planning department about the zoning, the area, kind of the history of the house itself. And we also looked at the King County parcel viewer to find out more about the property. Having had experience in city government and zoning, we knew where to look. There were two things that we noticed on the parcel viewer. The property was designated as a wildlife corridor. That was a welcome surprise for us. We did not know that. And second, the road in front of our house, East Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast, was a minor arterial. I just assumed it was going to be a major arterial, but it was a minor arterial. That's also beneficial, not as big a road as a major arterial. Nevertheless, there were multiple road improvement projects scheduled for East Lake Sammamish Parkway. A couple of them have been done already. Today, though, there's no wildlife corridor, and there's no projects for East Lake Sammamish Parkway except one intersection improvement. Meanwhile, the city is planning multiple connector projects that will redirect traffic from the town center down to the parkway. This was done primarily, in my opinion, to avoid mitigation and impact fees, because the concurrency requirements, if we included if the traffic was all directed to 228th, would have failed. But by directing it to East Lake Sammamish Parkway, where there is no road improvement plan, there's nothing to mitigate. nothing to pay an impact fee toward. There's no project. It's unconscionable that the city would invest in directing traffic to the parkway without including improvements to the parkway. That means there will be, that doesn't mean anything. I already told you what that means. Read my own notes. Also want to note that the parkway itself is a truck route. We have huge concrete trucks running from Cadman all morning. Go down and wave signs in your campaigns and you'll see it. It's a nightmare. I'm concerned about the amount of overuse of the parkway from the trucks. So I ask that you establish an East Lake Sammamish Parkway project and work with the community to design appropriate improvements for the parkway. If you want to talk about safety, look at the parkway, 2 lanes and open ditches. That's where we walk. Thank you.
Thank you. Online?
If you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. If calling by phone, press star 9. We have one commenter currently. Mary Wichter.
Talk and don't go behind me. Hi, good evening, Mary Wichter, since 2000. I just want to comment on a couple things on the tip. It looks like the Inglewood sidewalk to the roundabout there, like it might be being taken off or unfunded. I can say that there was some additional gravel added just on the west side of the roundabout, which helped this year because there's a bunch of mud that comes there. And I think there could just be temporary things done. And then the real way that you walk, like if you're coming up Inglewood Hill Road from the parking lot and the trail all the way up, because it was the first east-west connection, you pass all the development and then there's kind of a gap there. But if you actually look, there's a little paved path that goes into a neighborhood kind of in a little triangle. And then you can get to the roundabout and you can walk. And I think if there was some signage there, I think that road's pretty safe to walk on. And I think it's actually safer for people to be walking in the neighborhood rather than walking on a street that has a lot of traffic that converges at the roundabout. So that would be a workaround that I would suggest. I don't think we should do it forever, but I understand that money is short. On 218th, I think what Councilmember Lamb said sort of at the last part is very important. I really think I've gone out and looked at it several times, and I think doing something on the shoulder there would be very tough unless you're gonna have people walking in the ditch. And I do that on Lewis Thompson, so I know how that works. But I think maybe a pathway could be put through the park somehow. And I'm gonna say again, the Sammamish Children's School, which is directly adjacent to the Met Market. I went and I spoke with the assistant director there, Kelly, and I've looked at that parking lot a bunch. You should look at that for design for parks, and maybe the Public Works standard doesn't support it, but maybe the parks could. They just used a GeoGrid. I think it's hexagons. I took photos, but I didn't have time to send them in before the meeting today. And the people park on them. And I mean, yeah, giant trucks aren't there, but there are cars they park like I think every day of the year. And there's only one place where it's even kind of recessed where the wheels are. But I believe that GeoGrid design is super good. I think it's just in regular lawn. I don't think there's like substantial rock and stuff underneath. And I think that would be a really good way at maybe some of the parks where people need to park, where we could cut some costs and still serve people. I think it might even be ADA usable because it's flat, and then the grids can be replaced if they get destroyed. The Lewis Thompson project I'm super happy for. I think that sidewalk does need to happen. There was $3 million in budgets years ago, and I knew that could go toward Lewis Thompson. So I think that's very important to keep. There are other pathways. Having gone by Bellevue, I'll send in photos after the meeting tonight, but I just think there's other options because we can't have complete streets everywhere. We have too many critical areas, and I think we're gonna have to try to come up with ways, because I know a Transportation Improvement Board grant likes to have complete streets with sidewalks on both sides. So that's what I can say in 3 minutes, and I'll try to email in photos of just other ideas I researched. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no other commenters. Back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Is it time to close the public hearing? Yes, all right. Okay, so public hearing now closed. Gavel sound. All right, council, so I think before us we have adopting the plan. So it's R 2023-1016, unless we have any other comments or questions for staff. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I move that we approve the tip.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any other discussion or questions? Oh, go ahead.
If I can just, I just want to thank the staff. Again, I love the layout and the breakout. I love the accompanying document. And again, it's incredibly conservative from a financial standpoint, right? We assume no grant money, which you guys always find grants. So I think this is a pretty solid plan, and I really appreciate all the work that goes into this. Thanks.
Councilmember Trine?
Yeah, based on what I've learned tonight and I see being proposed, I will not be supporting this tip. The connection projects need to be vetted with the Planning Commission, which is a normal process. Seems to me that most of the projects are town center related, and since 6 members of this council have met with the town center reps, the results of this TIP seems to move traffic to the East Lake Sammamish Parkway to avoid state law known as concurrency, which is part of the GMA and a tool that the city can use. And there's no addressing the improvement of roadways, even on top of the plateau, with no plan to address the current or future impacts of what's going on the parkway. What we have in front of us is a tip that doesn't address the major issue of the city. The issue is the choke points, and that's a safety issue for me. So we need to avoid creating more congestion throughout the city until we address the choke points. We need to address a transportation master plan, which we haven't done yet either. This master plan should be for build out. So the choke points are the safety issue. We need to solve those first. So a vote for this TIP is a vote against the safety of the residents of Sammamish, so I will not be voting for this tip. Thank you.
All right, anyone else before we vote? All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, thank you so much, staff. By a vote of 6-1, it does pass. Thank you for your help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, another public hearing for the ordinance of amending Sammamish Municipal Code, Chapter 2102. Oh, hi. Yes. I don't even know how that happened. Hello.
Mayor Clark, Council, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. Tonight I have with me Avril Beatty, who is our current Planning and Permit Center Manager. She is the one who oversees the processing of thousands of permits here in the city and deals with constant application of our code, and her staff have also had to deal with application of our code. She's here to present to you tonight a code amendment package that is strictly related to reorganizing the code in order to deal with some complications that we may have created for ourselves when we updated the code with the last development regs update phase 2 code cycle. I'll pass it off to Avril.
Hello, I'm Avril Beatty, current Planning and Permit Center Manager. Am I able to share screen?
If you could promote Avril, that would be wonderful. Then we'll be able to share screen. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All righty. Here we go. Okay. Residential code cleanup. So off the bat, this is just to make the residential regulations easier to understand, easier to find applicable rules that apply, and cause a little less brain damage. So 4 years ago, we had a shift in some of the way the development standards were structured. We adopted regulations for dynamic setbacks, which affects how far a house has to be from its property lines based on how large it is. And so in the R4 and R6 zones, we have tiers for these based on house size. And along with that ordinance, there were some height exceptions for schools, frontage types, street frontage required for newly developed lots, which didn't affect homeowners as much as developers wanting to subdivide property. Then back in January 1st, 2020, we had adopted the 21, apologies, an overhaul to our development codes. We took different titles of the code from Title 16, which was construction. We had clearing and grading regulations. We had our subdivision rules. We had all of our regular zoning rules. We smashed them all into one large Title 21 that we have now. It has lots and lots of information in it. So we've been trying to share this information with the public as best we can. And just to provide you some background, I've been in planning for over 20 years now. Most of my career has been spent as a planner within the permit center of a large city. I've spent hours at the counter with homeowners trying to explain regulations, developing handouts to make things as simple as possible, and working with normal people and trying to explain complicated regulations to normal people is a challenge, and there's always ways that we can make improvements so that things could be less complicated, like unnecessarily complicated. So with that background, now that you know my story, looking at the regulations that we had, great regulations, but difficult to find, to sort through, to understand. We created handouts, we created information brochures, like we were doing the best we could with the regulations as they were. But the feedback from staff, feedback from the public would be so much better if we could just clean this up. So here we are. And as a total side note, whenever anyone is developing zoning regulations, best practices is to have 0 footnotes at the end of the table that has all the setbacks and everything in it. Kind of impossible to get to 0. In these efforts, we've gone from 32 to 9. So we feel like we've made some improvement. So this is what we're presenting to you tonight. Alrighty, oops, bear with me. Here we go. So for instance, our dynamic setbacks existing are buried in the footnotes of our table. We want to take those out and put them into the table themselves, formatted differently so they really pop. You can see them. It's easier to digest. And anytime we have setbacks to these effects, if you have a blank cell, it means there's not anything that applies to that cross-referencing. So this is what we have drafted up. And this is just an example. This is another section of our existing footnotes. There is so much there that just kind of got shoved into the footnotes that didn't really make sense and were kind of isolated from other similar regulations. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of what we were going with. In the packet, the PDF, page 24 for this item, has our cross-reference table. So for each underlined item or strike-through, there's an analysis column where we're explaining what it was and why we've moved it to its new location. I could go through these one by one, but you guys probably have better things to do tonight. So, but it's been available in the packet for you to read. So let me finish going through this, and then we'll see if you have any questions.
Just for the record, we did go through them with the Planning Commission one by one, so.
It was a fun evening. If you guys want to go back and watch that, I highly recommend it, not that I'm biased. So this is more example of things that we wanted to move to either things regarding tree requirements belonged in the more like environmental preservation section of the neighborhood design standards. Connectivity, parking requirements belonging with other sections. Setback exceptions should be with other setback exceptions within the code. So that's where we're at. Dun, dun, dun. So also whenever you're drafting up zoning regulations in your spare time, if you need a new hobby, best practices is to have up front the more restrictive regulation and then having an exception that's more flexible after the fact. Right now we have the opposite in a couple of situations. So same regulation, same output, nothing would change in what someone could build. We're just making it easier for people to understand. And we had some regulations where they were just overly verbose, so just cleaning up language, because sometimes when normal people read this, if it's more of the same thing, they think it must be different. And then they ask us, why is this, are these sentences different? We're like, no, they're not really. So simplifying was all that we were going for here. There were some sections in our height measurement that referred to options, but there were no actual options. It was an either you do this or you do that. Because of a physical situation, you don't get to pick which one. So we wanted to take out the word option there. And there was a strange reference, I don't know, like an unnecessary organ that ends up in bodies over periods of time from evolution. A reference to the King County fee schedule. We don't use the King County fee schedule. It makes sense to get rid of it. We have a perfectly good fee schedule that we developed ourselves that you guys have approved. We don't need a reference to a different fee schedule. So here we are. Are there any, there was some public comment that was given at Planning Commission and prior to Planning Commission, just basically asking questions. It was positive feedback. Since Planning Commission, people have requested copies of the proposed changes. There haven't been any feedback of what are you thinking, this is awful, or no, change it to this way. So there hasn't been anything to that effect. So based on the lack of criticism on the proposed changes, there seems to be some tacit consent and agreement. So I'm here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
I just want to say, I want you to come present more often. That was like the funnest presentation on the driest material ever. Thank you.
Councilmember Howe? Well, I think we have to do a public hearing.
Oh, public hearing. I would be willing to make a motion that
You're trying to be
holds.
me. You're still trying.
Actually, the only question I did have is because you did go line by the Planning Commission. I see that they absolutely approved it and so forth. Did they have any comments that made you change your mind on anything, or did they just hold to everything that you had already submitted?
They held to everything.
I will add to that once they understood what we were trying to do, there were compliments given by the planning commissioners that we should really strive to do this with the balance of our codes and really clean them up.
Councilmember Napure?
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff. I think this process started way back in 2018, 20-something. So I know I was a little part of that when I was on the Planning Commission. I think clearing up especially those tables, that's very important. And then also adding some graphics. I think that's what we had started doing, like removing the really outdated graphics, adding new ones. And, I think you're correct. Like, people read these and absolutely have no idea, and you probably end up spending way more time explaining rather than just cleaning these codes up. And I'm thinking we inherited a lot of it from King County when we became a city. So I really appreciate the work that has been done, this simplified language. And really, again, this is also goes towards our goal of being transparent and just, showing people what our regulations and code is all about. So thank you for working on this.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
I just wanted to thank staff, and I wanted to thank Planning Commission. I watched the Planning Commission meeting, so I want to thank them for their hard work. Like Councilmember Stewart says, this is very dry material, and we're very grateful for the Planning Commission going through it line by line and checking everything for us. And I know that they unanimously agreed with all the changes, and so I'm grateful to them that they did the work for us. And so thank you.
I think I'm just imagining Carrie and Avril together in a room, like fixing all of our documents. That would make me very happy. Yeah.
We'd be in that room a long time.
Yeah, it would be like, yeah. Okay, so now I will open the public hearing. All right, so we are opening the public hearing for amending Sammamish Municipal Code, Chapter 2102, 2104, and 2109. And I don't know if we have no commenters on that online. Move to any public comment online.
If you wish to provide comment, please raise your hand. I'll promote the first caller. Mary Wichter.
Hi, Mary Wichter, Sammamish, 23 years. First of all, I really want to thank Avril. I think the code cleanup was just sorely needed. She's done an outstanding job. The presentation at the Planning Commission was very good and thorough. And I think it's really needed. She flashed up a thing that had my name on it in the presentation. I couldn't actually read that slide fast enough. But I think the only thing lingering from the Planning Commission comment that I had is when they were cleaning up the footnotes at the bottom of one of the tables, I think one of the footnotes says, oh, a person can just ask for 10% more for stormwater. And I thought that is a really weird thing to have in the code. And it only requires like a special permission or something from the director. We should really be following stormwater codes and not just having little extra things in. So I don't know if that one individual statement, if that's still in there, if there's any way that could be deleted or removed, because we've adopted King County Stormwater Code in 2016, that started 2017. We did stormwater amendments in the city. And then we just most recently updated to the King County Surface Water Design Manual for 2021, starting in 2022. So those manuals are very good. Our addendum is very good. And I would imagine that one line of code has probably never been used. And it just was caught kind of when you juggle things around and put them together, you'll see things sometimes that don't make sense. So I think that was the only thing I remember. Otherwise, I think that if anything goes forward and there are problems, I think Avril will be the first one to know with her staff and the permitting people, and they would come back with changes if something had gone awry. So thanks for all the time and input for everything. This is super important. And I just, like I said, have that one question on that one line. Thanks.
Thank you.
I see no other commenters. Back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So if there's nothing else from council, I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing. So closing the public hearing on amending Sammamish Municipal Code 2102, 04, and 09. All right, council, so before us we have ordinance 2023-553 up for a vote. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I will make the motion that we approve the non-substantive code update amendments.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Do you have anything to add?
I really want Avril to come back.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks.
That's fair. All right, all those in favor of ordinance 2023-553 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you, council.
Thank you for your work. Next up, oh, Anjali, we've been talking about you. You've heard? Yeah. I guess we're not talking about what we really want to, but we will love to also talk about Fire Station 82.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. And while the team is being promoted, I will just share that we are excited to bring forward the bid results for the improvements of Fire Station 82 and bring to your consideration tonight the authorization of a construction contract. I'm going to hand this off to Kevin Teague, Deputy Director who oversees all planning for our department. And he will introduce the team and make the presentation about the improvements. And then hopefully Chief Lane will join us and be able to speak to operations and communications to our residents. With that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Anjali, and thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Kevin Teague. I'm the Deputy Director for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. Tonight, we are bringing you the construction contract for Fire Station 82 for your approval. With me tonight is our Senior Project Manager, Sevda Baran. We also have Eastside Fire and Rescue Chief Ben Lane. And from our consulting team, TCA Architecture, we have Gianni Africano and Sarah Ellie. All of these folks are available for questions at the end of the presentation. We have a short presentation for you just to refresh your memories about the project. We will discuss our objectives tonight, give you some quick background, talk about the construction plans, and discuss the contract and budget, show you where we are in the timeline, and then lastly go over our next steps for the project. Our objective tonight is to request Council's approval for the construction contract with Western Ventures for the renovation of Fire Station 82. Fire Station 82 is located along 228th Avenue in the north part of the city. It was built in 1987, and for the quick math, about 36 years ago. As it is right now, it is about 7,500 square feet of non-sprinkled space. This site has 38 parking stalls, and the facility is leased and maintained by Eastside Fire and Rescue. A project was identified here as part of the 2018 building analysis study. Fire Station 82 was listed as a major project in the 2021-2022 draft facility CIP. And in 2020, TCA Architecture was hired to perform a feasibility study for the building. And that feasibility study was reviewed by Council in June of 21. A design contract was awarded to TCA Architects for construction drawings and bid documents in November of 2021, and the council was briefed on the project and had the opportunity to review the design in October of last year. In terms of site work, the final design includes some clearing and regrading of the site for the addition and for a public access sidewalk. There will be new ADA parking stalls, the addition of electrical vehicle charging stations, as well as space for bike parking. We will be upgrading the electrical service, the generator, and the generator enclosure, in addition to adding a new monument sign. Inside the building, we're upgrading the sleeping area by adding 6 sleeping rooms. There are ADA improvements throughout the structure. We're adding a new exercise room and renovating the crew living quarters. There is a second floor expansion to accommodate a new kitchen and dining area, as well as upgrades to the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. The project includes the addition of conduit for future solar panels, should council elect to install those at a later time. We received 3 bids for this project. Western Ventures is the low bidder. The low bid is below our estimate for the project and within the approved budget for the project. Western Ventures came in at $4.7 million before Washington State sales tax. So adding the sales tax and a 15% construction contingency, we are requesting a total authorization from council of $5,995,220. Adding in other project costs, we are estimating the total cost for this project to be about $7.2 million. The design and engineering costs have previously been authorized by council. The cost for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as testing, will come to council once we are ready to move ahead with those items, as will the temporary facility reimbursement for Eastside Fire and Rescue. With all these items, however, we are below the $8 million approved in the 2023-2024 budget for this project. The next steps for the project is to have council authorize this contract. You can see our timeline here. The design contract was executed in the fall of '21. Permitting was completed this spring, and we are ready for the contract award. With council's approval, construction will begin this summer and be completed next spring. The next steps, with that, I would like to pause and ask Chief Lane to speak for a moment about service coverage, operations during the construction, and how all of this will be and is being communicated to residents. So do we have Chief Lane available?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Ben Lane, Fire Chief of the Eastside Fire and Rescue. I do want to start by saying thank you in advance for the ongoing support of this project. I've personally had the experience of working at the current Station 82 multiple times during my career, and I can confirm that this project supports some very much needed upgrades to that facility. I'd also like to just remind Council the current configuration of Eastside Fire and Rescue's deployment model within the city of Sammamish. We have 3 stations. The station we're discussing now is on the north end of the station, Station 82. Then you have another station near Pine Lake that would be sort of mid-span of the city. And then you have your third station, Station 83, near Klahani. It is really important to remember that there'll be no reduction in the number of personnel and or resources within the city of limits. We are just simply readjusting those to support this much needed construction project. So currently at Station 82, there are 3 personnel. There's a fire engine and a brush truck. That will be temporarily relocated, both those apparatus and personnel, to the Pine Lake Station, which currently houses 2 personnel and a basic life support transport aid unit. That basic life support transport aid unit will be temporarily located at the Knowles apartment complex, just 3 minutes south of the current Station 82 location. This will bridge the gap to maintain critical emergency medical responses to the north end of Sammamish. This is also done to minimize the impact of the construction project. I'm sure you could appreciate that if in fact we try to maintain occupancy within that station and have this essentially a full remodel of the station to going on around the cruise, it would take much longer than 14 months. So in order to expedite that, we have chosen to be a bit creative, and that aid unit will be the newest residents of the Knowles apartment complex. We have spent the last several weeks messaging that out to the community, and I'd just like to highlight a few of the things that we have done, starting with the apartment complex manager sent out an email to all the Knowles residents. We also distributed essentially some 3x5 informational cards to current residents. We've been on Facebook and social media. We've reached 6,300 people. Additionally, those posts have been shared with 8 different groups. We've used Twitter, posted multiple times. It's been seen over 2,000 times. And we've had 9 media engagements, including retweets by Cairo. We've been posting this on Instagram, and we posted it on Nextdoor, where we currently have 71,000 members in our area. And this information is also seen on our alert banner at the Eastside Fire and Rescue website. So we've done our due diligence around messaging. I think this will not just be, it doesn't end today. We continue to do that. And I'm confident in the adjustment of our deployment model will be able to properly serve the citizens within Sammamish. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, back to council. Cool. Councilmember Howe.
Hi, Chief Lane. thank you for the opportunity of doing the ride-along at the other station at, was it 83? Is that where I was? Okay, great.
83.
The, something I wanted to, I think the continued drumbeat of communication is going to continue to be important, including penetration to some of the more private Facebook groups potentially, just to help get that message through, and just so that they're actually, it sinks in. As you know, the repetition is so important. The other thing I was thinking about is the healthy in, healthy out, which seems to be the mantra of new recruits going into the service, so that they're healthy as they go in and healthy as they leave. It was really important and impactful for me to actually stand there and look at where the guys were working out and where the trucks were. And with the exhaust system set up in such a way to try to capture as much as it could, to pipe it out so that they weren't taking in more carcinogenic material than they absolutely had to. Given the fact that many of them have had PFAS jackets for so long as they train potentially, you know, and the foam, of course, the carcinogenic componentry is something that I think we need to be hyper aware of as a council that I don't know that we are. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up for the public record so that we as a team understand this, that it's a really big deal, and that we commit to making sure that there's as many safety well, not just checks, but buffers, systems in place so that we protect this valuable commodity in terms of individuals. And, you know, I'm sad that it's taken us this long to come to it, actually. The other thing, and this is just it may seem kind of trivial, but it's not to me. I was just looking at how worn out the station was. Counters chipped, you know, chairs not working great. There's some facility improvement. I wonder, could, you know, if we're looking at materials that have better longevity and durability, while still providing that professional and easy to clean type service. You know, if we're looking at those kinds of materials, if we've saved a little money in our budget, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to potentially make sure that the materials that we're using are upgraded to the extent that they maintain the professional appearance that we know that we want the station to have. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Councilmember Napure.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. One was, I think, Kevin, in your slide, I think it was slide number 9, it said testing. I was wondering what testing entails. And then my second question was around the rental. So how is that distributed from a budgeting perspective? Who pays for the rental in the Knowles apartments?
The testing portion is testing during construction, so it would be concrete testing, rebar testing, any of the materials that are being applied. We have third-party testing just to verify that the materials are structurally sound and appropriate for the site. And the second question you had was about the...
So a little bit on the testing. It's not the testing of the equipment that the fire station actually needs. That testing is not part of that testing,
That's
is it?
correct.
No, okay. My second question was about the rental that we have in the Knowles apartment. I was wondering how is that distributed between the city and the East Side Fire?
The city is reimbursing East Side Fire and Rescue for the cost of the rental for their relocation, and also assisting with, I think it was $100,000 on the soft costs. That includes some moving costs as well as some storage costs. You'll note that from previous presentations, that number has come down significantly when we had thought we needed to bring in a temporary building. We found, thanks to the Eastside Fire and Rescue folks, found a good solution that I think will work for everybody that's significantly lower cost.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I wanted to share, for those who aren't aware, I want to throw a couple of thank yous out there. 2 youth in our community, Rishi Hazra and Manik Gol, they came forward a few years ago when this project was first being discussed. And Eastside Fire and Rescue graciously sat down with them as well as some of our staff, and they helped to improve the design and the plans for this upgrade to make it more environmentally friendly and sustainable. So I just want to, again, partnerships and collaboration is great, but I give lots of props to those youth because they're the ones that initiated that and made that happen. So I think that's really important. And I would like to see, if we do have money left over in savings, I'd like to see us get those solar panels on right away. Because again, if the building's going to be around for 35 years, the sooner we get the solar panels on, the sooner we start saving money on the energy costs. So that would be something I'd like to understand. Obviously not to slow down any of the progress that we're making at the moment, but to see if we can't make that happen on opening day. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Just wanted to circle back on the solar panels and let you know that staff has applied for a Department of Commerce grant. That grant would cover the costs of all the analysis and design for a solar panel system at 6 facilities within the city, and this is one of them that they would take a look at. We thought we would have known the results of the grant by now, but we haven't heard back. They've delayed the award process for some reason, but we will certainly let council know once we get news on that.
That's great news. And I'm super excited. Chief Lane, I think your biggest problem is going to be when this opens, everybody's going to want to work at the new station. So good luck with that.
Including me.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I just had a quick question, Kevin. I remember last year, I think, we had a discussion about the solar panels, and we discussed solar at 82 and 83. And so I remember one of them wasn't as feasible just because of the way the roof was designed. Was it this one or the other one that made like recouping the costs much more difficult?
That was this one, Fire Station 82, and that had to do with both the roof angles and how the roof was broken up, as well as the surrounding tree canopy. I'm kind of looking to my team. Does anybody have anything to add to that? Gianni says yes, that's right. Okay.
Oh, so we would still be moving ahead, roughing it in despite the challenges, just because there is the potential to get a grant to offset that?
Yeah, the decision to rough in the conduit was made by council or directed by council before we applied for the grant. At that time, we were needing to make a step forward, and this seemed like a good interim step that would, be relatively low cost, but then leave the door open for adding the panels at a time when it made sense to do that.
All right, thank you.
All right, Council, do I have any other questions or comments? Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chief Lane, for jumping on, too. And Sevda, I think you're probably the backbone of this whole operation, I'm sure.
Always. Mayor, I'd like to move that we authorize the city manager to approve this contract.
Yeah, sure.
Second.
Did you have anything else, Deputy Mayor Lamb? Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, we have Aaron amending ordinance for the 2023-2024 biennial budget. And then I think after you will take a quick break before we transition to Town Center. Take it away.
Great. So no numbers have changed. We went through all of the adjustments to the carry forward ordinance and the update of the beginning fund balances and ending fund balance at the study session. So that packet included all those details, as well as the packet tonight shows the copy of the actual ordinance and the attachment with those numbers. So no change to any of the numbers that were reviewed previously. So now it's back to council to consider action.
Sorry, I was waiting for something to come on the screen, even though I know you're standing right there. I don't know why I was still looking at it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Aaron, or would anyone like to make a motion to pass ordinance 2023-554? Councilmember Howe?
I would be delighted to make a motion unless someone has a question. All right, I move that we continue with amending the ordinance number 02022-546. I don't have my glasses.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thanks, Aaron. Great. All right, let's take 10, and then we will transition to item number 15. So we'll be back at 8:20. All right, we are back. So on item number 15, I think David Pyle is probably kicking it off, or maybe Kelly, actually. Who could say? All right, David, okay. Proposed Town Center Development Term Sheet.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. With me this evening, I have Kelly Hildy, our Department Deputy Director, Matt Samwick with Sammamish Town Center Associates, Peter Brennan with Sammamish Town Center Associates. We are here this evening to discuss with you the topics of a term sheet that staff have been working closely with STCA on. I won't steal Kelly's presentation. However, we have been working in the background on trying to understand some of the city's interests and the developers' interests, along with the community's interests, in order to get a better understanding of what direction we might want to take as a city with development in the town center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly, who will walk you through how we formed the list and some of the complexities of town center.
Perfect. Thank you, David. As David said, tonight we are presenting a draft term sheet that serves as a comprehensive outline of areas of focus to be considered for future development agreements with STCA. Our goal is to ensure that we address all the necessary elements for the successful development of our town center. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll be seeking direction from City Council by asking, do you have any questions about the term sheet, its implications, and how it functions? Have staff included all the necessary elements in the term sheet? And are you comfortable with proceeding further and utilizing the term sheet as a guiding document for future development agreements with STCA? So, what is a term sheet? A term sheet serves as a roadmap outlining areas of focus and associated key topics to be considered as part of a future development agreement between the city and STCA. This is important because the term sheet plays a crucial role in the development process. Okay, I lost my presentation on my screen. Here we go. There we go. A term sheet brings clarity and alignment between the city and STCA, ensuring that both parties share the same priorities and objectives for the town center. This reduces potential misunderstanding and conflicts. The term sheet serves as a roadmap for efficient negotiations. Outlining the area of focus and key topics, it streamlines discussions, allowing both parties to identify the most significant aspects that require attention. This focused approach leads to more efficient negotiations. Allocation of resources is vital. The term sheet helps the city and STCA prioritize their efforts and resources by identifying the critical areas of focus. This ensures that we address the most important aspects first, optimizing our use of resources. By highlighting the key topics to be considered in future development agreements, the term sheet enables us to identify potential risks and challenges associated with each area of focus. Consistency and continuity are essential in the negotiation process. The term sheet ensures that discussions of future development agreements align with the initial understanding and intentions expressed in the term sheet. This helps avoid confusion and guarantees our final agreements are in line with our shared vision. And lastly, documentation is crucial for transparency and accountability. The term sheet serves as a documented reference throughout the negotiation process, capturing the agreed-upon areas of focus and key topics. It provides a point of reference during the development of final agreements, maintaining transparency and accountability between the city and STCA. So why are we considering a term sheet now? In order to answer that question, let's first understand the current status of town center development. Since the adoption of the Town Center Plan and development regulations in 2008 and 2010, there has been significant development and development review activity. Starting in 2014, with Unified Zone Development Plans, or UZDP applications submitted for the Sammamish Community and Aquatic Center and Southeast Village Townhome projects. This was followed by UZD submittals for Sammamish Village and Sam Apartments in 2015, and a building permit for Sky Apartments in 2017. In 2019, STCA submitted a preliminary subdivision application for the Brownstones West project and a UZDP application for the Southwest Quadrant Phase 1 mixed-use development project. 2020 marked the completion of the city's second major infrastructure project in the town center, the Southeast 4th Street Improvement Project. This was Aegis of Sammamish submitted a commercial site development permit for a senior care facility in 2022, which was followed by the Lake Washington School District's application for a UZDP for a new project in early 2023. In addition, our staff has received numerous feasibility level inquiries, including requests for project guidance, pre-development services, and pre-application meetings for multiple projects within the town center. So the town center is the IT project, an area of the city at the moment. We have reached a crucial point in town center development where major infrastructure decisions need to be made. However, the city cannot handle this task alone. We need to collaborate with the development community, particularly STCA, a major stakeholder owning approximately 70% of the undeveloped, privately owned portion of the sub-area, to ensure that the town center is built according to the vision outlined in the town center plan. The town center plan recognizes that its vision represents an ambitious challenge and even notes that the city is prepared to take concerted action towards its goal by engaging property owners and developers in partnerships that produce superior new development and meet public and private objectives. With that said, let's review the major topics outlined in the term sheet. Included in your packet is Exhibit 1, and for your consideration tonight, starting with multimodal transportation. A future development agreement will cover various aspects related to street layout, design, and connections. This includes thoroughly examining signalization, street layout and design, innovative street design standards, required deviations and departures, future right-of-way vacations, and a comprehensive traffic impact analysis. These considerations are crucial in developing a well-planned road system for the town center. Furthermore, an agreement will also address critical aspects of public transportation infrastructure. This includes exploring alignment with the transit plan, ongoing development, and coordinating efforts with Sound Transit and King County Metro. These initiatives aim to enhance public transportation options and integration within the town center. Next is the Green Spine and City Square. The Green Spine is a central element of the Town Center Plan and Town Center Infrastructure Plan. The Green Spine is a linear park space that follows a general north-south alignment within the core mixed-use area of the Town Center sub-area. This is also known as the TCA1 zone. It is composed of a hierarchy of spaces categorized into 3 zones: primary, secondary, and neighborhood transition. While each zone provides a unique pedestrian experience, all are stitched together by a common thread to create a seamless public amenity and a great public space for town center activities. At the heart of the town center, nestled within the Green Spine, lies the iconic City Square. This vibrant and centrally located open space sets the tone for scale, character, and essence of the core area. with its pedestrian-friendly block pattern and dimensions of approximately 300 feet per side. City Square serves as a lively gathering space for both residents and visitors of Sammamish. Future development agreements will explore the location, dimensions, and maintenance responsibilities of both the Green Spine and City Square. The image on this slide is just one of many concepts visualized in the Town Center Infrastructure Plan. Additionally, we will thoroughly review and determine pedestrian access and grade changes between private development areas and public open space. This assessment aims to enhance connectivity and accessibility for a pedestrian-friendly and walkable town center. A development agreement will consider pedestrian circulation, identifying key city trail locations, pedestrian connections, and their respective placements. Furthermore, this agreement will establish a standardized design process and define the party responsible for the maintenance of publicly accessible trails. Within a development agreement, we will thoroughly examine the design, layout, and management of stormwater, considering options such as consolidated or regional facilities. Additionally, we will explore implementation of a comprehensive low-impact development, or LID, approach and foster coordination between the public and private sectors in efficiently managing stormwater. A development agreement will consider an environmental and ecological design that balances the built and natural environment by incorporating natural resources, view corridors, and sensitive site characteristics as amenities and design elements that reflect the distinctive character of town center. Additionally, an agreement will provide opportunities for environmental education initiatives and consider the concept of tree banking to further implement the goals and objectives of the Urban Forest Management Plan within the sub-area. A development agreement will also incorporate proposed residential density and commercial space area while identifying alternative affordability levels, such as targeting 50% area median income. This approach aims to assist the city in meeting its affordable housing allocation and ensuring a diverse range of housing options within the town center. Lastly, a development agreement will also encompass miscellaneous topics that are essential for comprehensive planning. These include assessing utility capacity and coordination, including broadband, identifying infrastructure and private-public projects, and the party responsible for their construction, ownership, and maintenance, incorporating provisions for electric vehicle charging stations, promoting green building practices, addressing impact fees, and conducting SEPA review. Additionally, the agreement will address general considerations such as establishing maintenance agreements and outlining an entitlement review schedule to ensure effective management and oversight throughout the development review process. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we kindly request direction from City Council and would appreciate your input on the term sheet. We welcome your questions regarding its implications and functionality. We also are interested in your assessment of whether all the necessary elements have been included in the term sheet. Furthermore, we would like to gauge your comfort level with proceeding further and utilizing the term sheet as a guiding document for future development agreements with STCA. If your answer to the last question is yes, we have included a recommended motion, which is conveniently provided on this slide and also in your agenda bill. That wraps my portion of the presentation. I'll hand it over to Matt and Peter, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Kelly. Can everybody hear me all right? So I wanted to thank council, the city attorney, and staff for the opportunity to collaborate on this important community endeavor and in this meeting tonight. I also wanted to thank the council members who have or will participate in a walking site tour, and thanks to staff for doing the same. Without that type of participation, it is nearly impossible to properly balance the interests of the great community we're in the planning and development of the town center. And thank you to the staff for the enormous effort in preparing the materials tonight for council and the public. And we are always here to engage with anyone who wants to learn more about our work and plans. All questions are welcome. Thanks again for the time and consideration, and we'll look forward to discussing this more.
Councilmember Howe.
Thank you. I think it's a very good framework to start with. I really do. And I wondered, as you implement the framework, you're going to stumble across things that you might want to add. Is that a possibility? How hard is it going to be to either add or potentially subtract something that's not workable?
Thank you, Councilmember Howe. If I may, I'll take that one since this is a team effort here. I would say from the perspective of anything that's on the term sheet now, if it may not be wind up in whatever the next development agreement is. I think one of the things we want to be clear about is there might be multiple development agreements, and so not each one is going to encompass everything. If there are topics that we don't have on there now, I think what our commitment to you all would be is that we would come back and say we've run into something that we think needs to be addressed, and for transparency, bring it back to council and say, here's something that we feel needs to be added in. So I think from that perspective, we're really trying to sort of universe what we're going to be discussing and working on together as we move forward. So there's in the no surprises category.
And if we were to do a different type of term sheet for a different type of development, it would be specific to that development then. So each is, they're not, it sounds like it's not exactly a template that you can overlay, write once, run many. It sounds like it's a bit customized to each potential project. Is that a fair statement?
I would term it more with, I would say, potential property owner as opposed to specific project, because I don't necessarily know if each property owner would want to do the same project across multiple properties, if you will. So
Okay.
from the perspective of, yes, I think they would be property owner specific or developer specific if we were to replicate something like this. I think in some measure, because there are many multiple properties, that's a little inarticulate, but you get where I'm going, and there's so much of the infrastructure impacts what has to go that connects into the property that STCA is in control of. I think that makes this unique under any scenario.
Okay, so we're thinking this is going to help speed things up, keep things well defined. You'll be able to know where your friction points are and potentially how to, address them. Is that, would you say, is the goal and the purpose?
Correct. We see this as foundation building. So really starting with that infrastructure, the foundation, I believe, as Audrey has said in the past, it's like building the framework of a home, right? And that's what this term sheet is giving that framework. And then we get into the nitty-gritty details like, wallpaper and fixtures within the development agreement itself.
Okay, and just one last question just about this framework. Is there any legal implication if there's a break point? We reach an impasse.
Councilmember Howe, I think that the answer to that would be, I think if we reach a true impasse, then we'll probably wind up coming back to council and looking for direction on how to proceed.
Okay.
I think overall, if I may, for the group, we see this as a partnership to help get to I think what the town center plan called for a better outcome, both public and private. And so we're coming to the table, and STCA is coming to the table as a partnership, and this is the framework for our partnership. And we might have disagreements. In fact, I'm sure we will. But this will give us the guidelines and framework to try to work through it to get to whichever versions or however many versions of DAs we need to get to finality.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, STC, have you ever done a development agreement before with a different entity?
No.
First time for everything. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Councilmember Napure?
Great, thank you, Kelly, and STC also for putting together this term sheet. My very basic question is this a legal document or is this just a guideline again?
I would say it is non-binding. It is very much aspirational. It is the set of foundational concepts that we view as a focusing tool going forward for the first in a series of development agreements that we anticipate entering into with STCA.
However, it has been through legal review, this term sheet.
I've very much been involved along with STCA's legal counsel, Steve Roos, who I believe is participating as well in tonight's meeting. So yes, it very much has had lawyers' fingerprints on it and will obviously have more lawyers involved with the future series of development agreements that are anticipated.
Great. So I'm going to ask that question a little differently on, I understand why we have the term sheet. What would happen if we just didn't have it and we still went ahead with planning for a future, for our city's future? What would happen if we did not have a term sheet?
So I can answer that. I'm assuming, just for clarification, without a term sheet, also not doing development agreements, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Then, we would work through the entitlement process, through the master plan process, in the A zones, the UZDP. It would be somewhat of a challenge because we are talking about major infrastructure like stormwater and roads, commercial and residential units. This gives us an opportunity to lay the framework and make sure that we're getting that overall vision with the town center ahead of time before we get into that entitlement process. We also see this as a way to efficiently get through the entitlement process because we've come to an agreement on some major points. So this is an efficiency tool for sure. So there is a way, there is a path without doing this, but it's an easier path if we do.
If I could, it allows us to address all the property without putting all of the properties under application, which would get somewhat cumbersome to move that much property through an application without having the discussions with staff and council as we are right now.
So other than the sort of bureaucratic aspect of it, multiple applications, multiple reviews, how does the city benefit from an environmental or sustainability perspective if we do the term sheet?
I'll take a swing at that and others can jump in. I think this allows the city to voice our interests and what council's interests, quite frankly, and that's what was part of what gave us the term sheet, was to get the interest about what are we looking for, what is council looking for, what's the community looking for as we move forward, and then we come to the table with those in mind and collectively try to find solutions that are different or better than we might otherwise get. And so it's an opportunity to discuss those, to try to, for lack of a better term, this might be a little inarticulate, but for us to be creative, to find solutions that still meet code, but get to something that's more creative than would be just strictly meeting the code process.
So Kelly, from your answer, what I get is that, yes, if we look at it from an approach of term sheet and development agreements, we get a more comprehensive stormwater system, right? Or we can pool in our resources and, maybe save a lot more trees than what we could do before and things like that. So I am in favor of the term sheet. I really think it offers us a really good framework. I know there have been a lot of conversations, and I love the little, I think, did you call it the iconic town center, town square? I'm glad you're already calling it iconic, even though it's not there. It's and I know that having a framework like this also offers us more community spaces, which is something that the people living in Sammamish really crave for. I can just tell you, I first of all, happy belated Father's Day to many fathers here and those who are listening. And for our Father's Day, we went to North Bend, and I loved being in the downtown area, and you could walk everywhere, and it was just like we had so many options there, which I don't feel we have in Sammamish right now. And Kelly, I'm sure this is your special, fingerprint on here, which is under the environmental and ecological design, environmental education. I really was very impressed to see that, because one does not think about that naturally when you're thinking about, term sheets. So really, really excited about this. I think one of my other last questions is, in other term sheets that I've seen as templates, I've seen a significant section devoted especially to funding resources, and just was curious on how does that play with our term sheet, with this term sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a fun conversation. And as we start looking at tackling our first development agreement, it really is identifying roles and responsibility, what we're coming to the table with, what we're willing to negotiate. There are some provisions within the code that the city has, and we are looking forward to having those conversations with City Council, with STCA, to get that right answer for guiding the future applications of the town center. So I have a feeling that's going to be a part of every development agreement, a part of every conversation we have, because we are partners in this. So what is the city willing to bring to the table? What is STCA willing to bring to the table? And I think that's where it gets fun.
Councilmember Trine?
Thank you, Mayor. To govern is to take the responsibility to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm just going to go to the life one first. And it's not the first time I've said this from the dais, but clean air. So if your plan is not to provide clean air and instead build a lot of buildings that are going to be emitting and at the same time tearing down the trees that would take in the CO2, which would offset that, and then putting in dwelling units that are going to then provide more cars, even though we talk about some kind of transit. The reality is 95% of the people that are going to be dwelling in the units that you would build are going to be getting off this plateau in a vehicle. And so if clean air isn't being addressed as one of the top priorities to address the climate change, then I think your first little paragraph in your term sheet that says the categories are generally listed in the order of priority, we need to change that already. Second, because it's not about transportation, it's about clean air. Second one would be about clean water. So then I really got to be looking at that stormwater element for sure. And the fact of the matter is that you are fully aware that you're building on the top of two of our largest aquifers, and neither one of those aquifers, at least from what I understand right now, is not contaminated with PFAS. So the protection of that water would be number one on my priority list, or number two. So I don't see that in number one or in number two. So I have no desire to agree with this term sheet. It needs to change. Next would be the green spine. Change the name, please. It's not a green spine. Unless you do something that would be totally within a good framework is, how am I going to blend the buildings with the natural beauty that's already there on the property? Meaning I've got to move buildings to keep the legacy trees, and let's just call them what they really are. It's a second growth forest. We already know that. The old growth is gone. It was already logged off. So we have a second generation forest here. Some of these trees are 100, 120 years old. So how do I protect those? I don't see that in here. And it's clearly not in the green spine or your city center. Next. So, and I wouldn't put them in these priorities, even that I'm saying right now. Well, the top two I would, but I would have to look at safety then too for the whole community. Now I get it, the fact that you guys walk into, unless you developed the Met Market, Sky Apartments, the Ichi Joe project across the street, heck, the Aquatic Center, unless you guys developed that already, I get the fact that you walk into a really tough situation. So has any of that been built by STCA? Yeah, sorry. I feel for you on that side, because now here's where the creativity comes in. If you want to partner with us, design standards needs to be included in here, which in a sense they are there in the town center section of our plan. So, but it's like the hardest part is going to be, how do I keep the character of Sammamish, the love of the nature, provide the community spaces, and then blend in what is already there. that's a high bar to reach. And I don't know exactly how to do that because I'm not an architect, I'm not a design person, but I think that's the task that if you want to convince the residents of Sammamish that you have a good idea, how do I turn what is perceived by some as not really attractive, and how do I make it so it matches into the character of Sammamish? So if you're willing to do something like that, now there's hope. And then the last thing, I have to bring this up because I've addressed it several times, is the documents that the town center folk brought forward said that the stormwater stuff was not feasible. Your experts came back and said, based on the soil content, that the stormwater meeting the regulations that we have in our code, you can't do it. It's not feasible, not feasible, not feasible. I read down the whole list. All right, I'm just going to tell you, but it is feasible. It's just you missed some things. Sorry to be critical there, but some things were missed. All right, because there's a whole list of low impact development that is within our code right now and was then, that can be done to offset and mitigate for the impact of the development that you're doing. So if we don't have that in our frameworks, then that's missing. So all that to be said, because here's what I do know. If we don't have this documented, if it's not in writing, then it's not going to happen. So it needs to be in writing. And so right now at this point, I mean, I like the fact that environment's there, but it's number 5, and balancing the building and natural environment, I think that's the attempt to have it blend, which means hey, can I have a wildlife corridor, at least one in your whole property? There's a natural one that's already there, and it can be even enhanced. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done before I would be interested in entertaining this as something that should be ready to go forward with. Thank you.
So if I might, council member, if there's a wildlife corridor out there, let's go walk it together. So we can do that. I'd love to hear your input about the wildlife corridor and the other things that we're doing. So I'll extend our invitation for you to just come and walk like your fellow council members, and we'll have a conversation about your concerns and the people you represent, and we'll be happy to listen and explain what we're doing. So the invitation's still extended as it was last time.
Yeah, I just prefer to do it whenever I don't have an item that's right in front of my face on the agenda. And that's the challenge that we're facing right now, to get a meeting.
Any time that works for you will work for us.
Yeah, that might be in the future then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
I want to thank everybody that has worked on this term sheet. I'm going to assume it took a lot of work to get to this point, and overall, I think the term sheet is really good. I appreciate having the town center move forward. It will bring a huge benefit to the city. It will bring revenue that our city is much needed to keep our level of service for all the things that we offer. I'm sure the residents will appreciate all the new retail that will be coming here, including restaurants and bars, so they don't have to get in their cars to go to Redmond and to Issaquah. I appreciate the affordable housing that will be coming here as well, so that we as a city and as a country, we can help alleviate some of the desperately needed housing. And I see like positive things that's going to happen there in terms of how we're going to build, and that it's green, that we're building green, and that we're positively addressing climate and helping people leave their cars at home. So I very much appreciate that we are finally on the path to moving forward with the town center. The only thing that I wanted to mention on the term sheet was under miscellaneous topics, number 1, utility capacity and coordination, which includes broadband. And I just wanted to mention that broadband includes fiber, wireless, cable, and satellite, so includes a host of high-speed technologies. And I'm particularly interested in having a fiber network to this to town center, particularly one that is not big telecom, because it offers the residents and the business there an option for a lower cost and a better provider, better service rather. But overall, I support this plan. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I'll just say ditto on the thanks to everybody. As I understand it, right, this is just the starting point. These are just the topics that we're going to talk about. So nothing's been decided, and nothing will be decided without significant community input, which you guys are going to great lengths to get more input, and it will have to come back here, and we'll have probably a public hearing and, again, more input. So this is not the end, it's the beginning in a way, right?
That is correct.
Okay, great. And I really appreciate that. And I do share the concerns that obviously we want all of this to be about the, building green and limiting our carbon footprint. Obviously, the lowest carbon footprint or the lowest impact to the environment and the most sustainable way to live is going to be in multifamily. So I see this as a path forward for our community to improve our per capita carbon emissions. I mean, in a lot of ways, the town center is going to have to make up for some of the older developments that we have that are not very environmentally friendly, unfortunately. They might be pretty, but they're not very environmentally friendly. So I think it's great. If I understand correctly, a lot of big projects like this in many cities have development agreements that, because there are so many details to work out, right? We have pretty decent town center code, but the devil, as they say, is in the details, right? So it's pretty common to have a development agreement or a series of development agreements. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And, our code and our long-range plans only go so far. It doesn't cover all of the details. And so development agreements are the tool to really work with the developer and the city, have that partnership up front. You can imagine if we did that for all major development within the city, we'd have a different look and feel. So this is an opportunity for us all to come to the table and have those conversations on what we want to see, make sure our vision is implemented, and do it as a partnership.
Okay, and unfortunately, we've never updated our town center code, so our town center code doesn't require things like solar panels or EV chargers, right?
It encourages, it does not require.
Right, so this is an opportunity for us, as I think you kind of explained. We come to the table with things, STCA comes to the table with things, and hopefully the thing we come out with is even better than what we could have imagined. And I feel like the one development agreement that we did, we got public benefit, right? You guys looked at it and said, hey, wait a minute, there's a better way to do this. So that the public gets something better. I don't know if STCA got something better, and that's not for us to be worried about. STCA will take care of themselves, right? But we got the public a better result. So I'm excited about this. I appreciate all of the input. I think most, if not all, of the council members provided input, and I know staff put a lot into this. So I'm excited to move forward and to have more community conversations and to have that transparency so that we can sort of demystify and hear the concerns and address them. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think that was, reflecting on the last development agreement we did with STCA last year, we got a superior design. We got more of that built and natural environment balance. The previous design had a trail just off to the side, and we ended up, through that development process, getting homes that frame an open space, and we would not have gotten there if it wasn't for that development agreement. So there is that potential of getting a superior product, one that will hopefully meet our vision for the town center plan and implement that vision. So thank you, Councilmember Stewart, for reminding us of that development agreement, because a lot of really good came out of that. So thank you.
If I could add one thing to that as well, I agree with everything Kelly said. I think another thing to think about is the predictability that it also provides the builder. I won't speak on behalf of STCA. However, I do know that when they're looking at requiring things like deviations from standards, that's not, there's not a lot of certainty in that going forward, and it's a very large investment, and that for them to have predictability, it also allows for us then to get a better design, because they're then willing to look at more creative designs if they're assured through development agreement, contract, if you will, that there will be the deviation from standard will be granted. So the prior version of the code that was being applied as it's written resulted in this trail that Kelly mentioned, versus the creativity of the group trying to find the best answer for the community and get the best product, but also provide the security and certainty to the builder, I think is really where the crossroads is, that is the benefit of a development agreement.
And David, if I may, as you bring that up, if I recall the last time we did this, I think, if I understand it correctly, we can't enter into an agreement that isn't meeting our code or better, right? So there has to be a public benefit. So we're not going to do something that doesn't have a public benefit in this agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the deviation that I mentioned is something that's allowed by process. However, that is not something that you typically would see granted until a later point in the process. So being able to hash that out earlier on allows predictability going forward, so that people or builders and private property owners are willing to take a leap of faith that their product that they're trying to move forward will work out. It's a large investment on their part as well.
Thank you.
Carrie?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If I may add, on page 199 of your packet, you'll see there's a narrative paragraph at the start of the term sheet categories that are listed. And I bring that up because, you know, as a group, we really appreciate the council's feedback tonight and welcome further input from the community. Wanted to note that some of the items of concern that were noted about clean air, clean water, those are obviously high priority items and are typically dealt with during the regular entitlement process that the city requires every developer to go through. These items were identified and presented in what we think is a general order of priority, because like the analogy and metaphor of building a house, this is the foundational framework. It's also a more efficient tool than having to just strictly go through the entitlement process. We think it will result in a better end product. And in addition, it does allow us to think more holistically about the entire town center and not just focusing on a particular project within a specific quadrant. And then I wanted to also say, in terms of process, state law does require a public hearing for each and every future development agreement, just like we went through last time with Brownstones West. So we will be bringing each and every development agreement back to council. It will have a public hearing, and again, invite the public to participate in that. And I just wanted to put a plug in for the town hall that will be hosted a week from tonight, Tuesday, June 27th, here at City Hall, about the town center, and encourage everyone to attend that as well. I'm sure Kelly and David might have something to add about that town hall.
You can pre-register on our website, and we would, for anyone watching tonight's City Council meeting, we ask that you do so because we want to see you all there at the town hall. It's going to be great. It's not just going to be development projects by the private sector. It's also going to be the work that we're doing here at the city, and so it's a way to promote a really collaborative effort as a whole. So please sign up. We'd love to see you next Tuesday.
What time does it start?
5:30, the doors open, and the presentation starts at 6. So if you're a little late, you'll be here in time for the presentation.
Light refreshments, cookies?
Of course.
Awesome.
We're gonna
Okay.
lure you in with cookies.
I'll come then. Councilmember O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mayor. I really like the term sheet. Thank you, everyone, for working so hard on it. I just had when we were turning in our town center big ideas, and a lot of my big ideas, were really where the natural and the built world would kind of come together and kind of work together. Whereas we will have very much input in kind of like how a building is going to look architecturally. We're not going to have an input and tell a designer, no, put the window here, make the roof line look like this. I think, though, what we can't get in hardscape, we could maybe get in landscape and natural world. I talked a lot about in my submission, vertical gardens and those kinds of things, drought-tolerant plantings, those kinds of things. Are those kinds of details, is that a little bit further down the road and not in the term sheet? That's more in each individual plan as it evolves, although I feel like these are issues that could be applied to the entire sub-area plans. But are those very specific things something we would talk about down the road?
So the good news is most of that can be handled through the entitlement process, through construction permits. Our design standards for town center do encourage drought-tolerant plantings, really, the spacing of open space. But if there's something specific related to green building, like green walls or roof gardens, I think that level of detail we can include in a development agreement, get a little bit more specific on that. But again, the code does outline, has a good starting place for that type of development. So we would start there, and then if it needed to be enhanced, that's something we can definitely discuss.
Because I think those are the kinds of things that make a development that we're proposing here, make it look more site-specific, and where we could really make it look more like and incorporate the more of our neighborhood fabric, more of what makes Sammamish, as opposed to this could be a development in Totem Lake or anywhere else. The buildings may look similar, but we will refine them and we will present them slightly differently, so we'll kind of keep more of that Sammamish look to it. And, and I kind of heard some of the things that Councilmember Treen was saying, and a lot of what he was saying about the natural environment, I support. And Councilmember Treen, I would really encourage you to maybe walk the area with STCA and certainly show your wildlife corridors. I think that would be very valuable to everybody to get that kind of input, and I think it would be valuable for the people that you speak for that opinion to be heard. So I would encourage you to do so. But I support the term sheet, think it's really good, it's a great starting point, and I just look forward to seeing what this area is going to look, and it's going to enhance our city so much, so thank you.
Oh, sorry. No, that was just me. And thank you for meeting us, I think, with 2s and 3s. I know you all have spent a lot of time with us and with STCA. So I really like the term sheet. I like where we're at. I'm good for it. I don't know if anyone else wants to make the motion or if what you all think about.
I'd like to make the motion, Mayor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I move to direct the city manager to further refine topics listed in the term sheet and work with STCA on one or more potential development agreements with the term sheet as the guiding document regarding potential topics and priorities.
Second.
All right, any comments on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right. Thank you, David and Kelly and Peter and Matt. Have a good evening. We'll obviously see you. Oh, please, go ahead.
Just say thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate all the help with this and the work on this, and we have more to come, so.
See you in a week.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, so I think, is Audrey coming back on for this next one? Okay. So this one, thankful to Carrie, as always. So under RCW 42.23.040, remote interests, I am a paid intern at Lane Powell as of last week, so I cannot discuss and or vote, so I'm going to recuse myself from this entire topic, but I will let Audrey kick it off.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. I am back. Good evening, Council. I'm Audrey Star-City, Public Works Director, and this is a very quick presentation. We are here this evening to ask for your approval for a supplemental agreement for our existing contract with Lane Powell, and I do have a handful of slides. Let me share my screen. Okay. So we are currently pursuing the cost recovery of utility impacts associated with our Issaquah Fall City Road Phase 1 project that was completed in 2021. This information is also in the agenda packet this evening, but we are pursuing a cost recovery of approximately $2.8 million. And the cost of construction was increased by multiple delays throughout the project and impacts caused by utilities. So we are currently working with Lane Powell for our legal representation, and we are here in front of you this evening to ask for a supplemental agreement in the amount of $225,000 that would raise the contract authorization to a total of $371,000. And unless there are any questions, I do have a motion prepared for you as well.
Councilmember
And
Stewart.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
I was
you.
just going to say back to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Stewart.
I was just curious on the amount. It seems very high, and it's more than double what we've already spent. So I was wondering if there was any way we could approve a smaller amount for right now.
Certainly, if council's interested in entertaining a smaller number, but this number is based on our consultation with outside legal and also includes the cost related to a damages expert who will be necessary, we believe, for the continued effort to recover the full amount of funds that we believe are attributable to delays on the project.
It's a big number, and I guess I personally prefer to, kind of do something smaller and have another check-in if at all possible, just to manage the costs to the best of our ability.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, Councilmember Stewart. I want to assure the entire council that even at this level of additional authority, there will be more check-ins throughout this process, and we will be providing that opportunity long before we get to having expended that number. There will be other critical junctures in the timeline for the litigation that's anticipated, and so I can assure you there will be numerous check-ins.
Councilmember Howe.
And I would assume that you don't have to spend all of that money. So if for some miracle we got to a settlement of some kind, that this is up to, it's not must spend.
Absolutely, that is correct.
That's correct.
That being the case, I would, unless you have a question, then I would move to authorize the city manager to execute a supplemental agreement for the existing contract with Lane Powell PC in substantially the form of Exhibit 1.
Second.
Any other question or discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Sorry, Councilmember Stewart, I think I saw your thing come up right before we voted. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I can't count. 5-1, that passes. Thank you, Audrey.
And one abstention.
The what?
One abstention.
Oh, one abstention, that was me, yes. So 5 plus 1 equals 6, plus me equals 7. We are good, yeah. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. All right. Krista, Planning Commission.
And Mayor, if I
Again.
may kick this off really quickly while Krista pulls her information up. Council will recall that last week I shared out that we had, as you all know, we have an opening on the Planning Commission. And did council want to add an additional question or vary their question about what was asked of prospective commissioner applicants? Since that time, I believe we have another commission opening on the Parks Commission. So we now have two. We have one on the Planning Commission and one on the Parks Commission. So the timeline and the questions would apply to both application processes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Krista.
Good evening. I've placed on the screen the submitted questions from council, and I did receive responses from additional council members who said they were okay with the questions as submitted. And then if the council could decide how they want these, if they want these questions to be added, there is the written application that a candidate completes, and there is then the verbal interview. So you could have 1, 2, or 3 of these on, or none of them on your written application, or you could have split them between the written and the verbal interview, just whatever your discretion is. And just to note, if I do have the timeline below, iCompass, where we normally do our applications, sometimes it can take a while for them to update an application, so I will probably be using a different JOT form. So the form, we'll get the application fixed permanently, but for the short term, we might use a different format just to get the update made quicker to the application. And on the potential timeline, open it up tomorrow and have applications due Friday before that July 11th council meeting, which would have the interviews and the appointment resolution, so the person could be appointed immediately. And then we would add also the Parks Commissioner potentially. I think the Parks was still going to confirm that resignation. They did confirm it, okay, so it has been confirmed.
Alrighty, there's going to be a lot of options here. Councilmember Indapure?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the council members who submitted their questions. I really like them. My preference would be the second question. I really like the way it's framed, and I would love for it to be on the written questionnaire. Yeah, I think that will really help us understand where folks stand at with the DEIB principles. So that's my vote.
Would you like to make that a motion, or would you like everyone to discuss?
I would like everybody to discuss. I mean, if people have other options, but that's what my preference is.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, a couple of suggestions. If you have to create a JOT form to update the application, I have a strong recommendation that you make 2 different forms. I think our application form is really confusing because it munges together Planning Commission and Parks Commission questions, and oftentimes it can be a little bit confusing. So if we're doing that, we might want to clean that up to make it more clear. And I also had submitted that I'd like on our written application for people to have to state that they will basically uphold, and not being the lawyer, I don't know exactly what the verbiage would be, but basically to say that they will not discriminate against anyone based on all of the things that are protected by the federal and state government. And I would like there to be a statement on there that they have to kind of check and sign that says, you know, I won't discriminate against people based on race or whatever, all the, you know, sexual orientation, all the things that are already protected. And I know that, you know, when they take their oath, they say that they're going to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Washington, but I think we need to put it a little more front and center. So I'd like to see something like that on the application as well. Just my 2 cents.
So I agree with Councilmember Indapure. That second one, I'm good if that's on the written. I like the first one just because I think that really makes somebody think. So my vote would be that could be like the in-person interview oral question on our DEIB stuff. Councilmember Howe?
The first one's pushy. I know, I wrote it, right? So it challenges you, and I would vote, frankly, for the second one as being probably the better one, because I think people will be able to, you know, carefully consider and be able to answer it. I like the third one as well. People will twist it and say, well, what if the council did something about honesty? I'm an honest person, so I, you know, that's kind of how I was looking at it, is you could manipulate the question a little bit. That was the only thing.
So we're taking your pushy question off, and maybe the second and the third one is going to be your preference?
You like the middle, the second one.
I like that one too, yeah.
I think that's pretty solid. And then you guys could use any, you know, variant of these for the in-person part.
Yeah, but what was that? Yeah, I'm good with the second one being in the written part, in the written application. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Is there a question on the interview regarding values, conflicts with personal values? I remember there was a question along the same lines the last time we interviewed for commissions.
we're pulling it up. I can't remember off the top of my head. I do not believe there's anything about values in the interview question.
There was something about conflict of something. I submitted it, but I can't remember.
I know.
I think it was like, how do you manage conflict in situations when you're in a team, and if you have a difference of opinion, how do you manage it? Not that one?
That wasn't it.
Another conflict one? Okay.
Well, maybe we could just resolve it so that they're not duplicative. But
So there's,
that's all.
my apologies, there's the, how would you deal with a disagreement in a commission setting? And then there is any potential for a conflict of interest based on your personal interests.
No, I'm going to have to look for it.
So I'm going to move to add question 2 to the written interview.
Second.
Any discussion? Wow. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, and then for the rest, for like the actual in-person interview, Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I'd actually like to make a motion that we add a statement to the written application that people say that they will basically not discriminate.
A second.
Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. I think based on what happened, we've danced around and we thought that it was enough before that people got it. They take an oath of office and it says they're going to do it, but that was clearly not clear enough. And so I would like to put it right on the application that they have to check that box before they submit their application that says, I will not discriminate against any group of people in the city based on all of the things that are written into those laws, so that it's crystal clear that that's not acceptable.
And I just had a follow-up question, if that's for all boards and commissions, and if we're going to have Carrie or something write it so it doesn't sound...
Yeah,
Okay.
Lawyers should totally do it. That's why I prefaced it when I brought it up before that I'm not a lawyer.
No, but that's what I mean, just like to... Councilmember Howe, do you want to speak to that?
Oh, I was just going to add a friendly amendment, actually, to say, and do you want to add a statement that says, and uphold the values as stated by the city council that we hold for the city? And that way you bring in the value thing as well as
Do we have those clearly documented somewhere that that's an obvious thing? Because I like the sentiment, but I think it needs to be more like something that we can point to easily for them. So I think we could add that later if we get our values clearly documented.
Well, I thought we had our values clearly documented, actually.
Do we?
Yeah.
If I may, Council.
Yeah, please.
When you adopted the Code of Conduct for the council, boards, and commissions of the city, you incorporated so many of these concepts within that Code of Conduct. As we talked about at the time you adopted that, it is an aspirational document. It's not, legally binding. And you do have due process in your code, especially for certain commissions, about how to remove a member of a board or commission. I know that you do have due process and provisions related to removal, in particular of a planning commissioner. But for example, your code of conduct, I'm reading right from it, it talks about to consistently demonstrate the principles of professionalism, respect, and civility in working for the greater good of Sammamish. That as a member of this council, as well as a board or commission, I agree to these principles of conduct. One of them is assuring fair and equal treatment of all people. Another one is conducting myself both personally and professionally in a manner that is above reproach, taking care to avoid offensive personal comments, showing no tolerance for intimidation or bullying, serving as a model of leadership to the community. Many of these concepts are already captured, I submit, in your code of conduct. If you think that something needs to go further, that's, open for discussion by the council, but I just wanted to remind you of what your code of conduct already says.
May I modify my motion?
Yeah.
I move then that we put on the application that they say that they will agree, that they have read the code of conduct and will agree to sign that if they were to be appointed, so that they read that up front.
Does that need a second?
Second, yep.
Oh, yeah, because I was like, I second that. Yeah, Councilmember Napure. Yeah, totally agree. I was just going to say, that sounds awesome. I don't know if we can
Thanks,
have
Carrie.
it as a post with the not job posting, this is not a job, with the posting, you know, if there's like a link to it or something, that would be great. So all those in favor to have the code of conduct piece added, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. And then Krista, what else did you need from us?
They did that one. And did you want anything for the verbal interview?
Verbal interview.
I think the question will be, Krista, I can't remember off the top of my head what the question was last time around. I think it was a council-generated question, and I don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, can we pick from the pool
I
again or something?
I did find it. It's value conflicts are about the way things ought to be, not the way they are now. It highlights our core values and principles. How would you handle value conflicts with the topics that are covered on the Planning Commission?
I mean, I'm good if that's one of the questions.
Yeah, let's ask that one.
Yeah.
And then if you were okay with the timeline.
Can we see it again, please?
Oh, right. I guess just right down here.
Yeah, I'm good with that only because we have such a short window. Because that's our last meeting is the 11th of July.
We have one more.
Or one
We have
more.
a meeting on the 18th.
Shoot. Okay. We missed the first meeting. That's where I got. Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. Anyone else have any thoughts? Is that super clear, Krista?
Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome. And then I'm sure you will come back to us if we've messed up in some way. Yeah, always. Yeah. All righty. Thank you so much. City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Carrie stole my thunder, and I was just going to remind everyone about the town hall next week. But the Town Center Town Hall next week here in City Hall opens at 5:30. Presentation will start at 6. We've asked all our Town Center partners to participate if they are able or interested. So hopefully we'll have a lot of information here for the community to come in and learn about both the Town Center plan that is already in place and then what the future looks like moving forward from our property owners and developers in Town Center.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up on the Public Issues Committee meeting that I had last week. One of the agenda topics was Metro's plans to reduce scheduled bus service by 5% in September, and there is a Sammamish impact. This will be regarding Route 216. It's going to be fully suspended. The service is South Sammamish Park and Ride and affects 3 morning time slots. But there will be no changes to Metro 269, which also services Sammamish Park and Ride. So if you are a resident, there will be a slight reduction in service, but know that you will still have service at that Park and Ride.
Councilmember Napure?
Oh, I just wanted to ask our city manager to introduce his newest staff to all of us again. Oh, our deputy city manager.
You need to come on camera.
Just in the public.
You have to come on camera for sure. Yeah.
I think, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, I think that's probably a better approach. I'm sure she's thrilled by this, but I would like to introduce the new deputy city manager. Today is day 1, so please welcome Rachel Bianchi to the city. We're very excited to have her. She comes with a wealth of experience, and I will turn over her just very brief about yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity to serve this community. Public service is very important to me, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that in a new community. I have had the great fortune to have spent the last 9 years working with the city of Tukwila, and in fact, your city attorney shares a city with Tukwila. So thrilled to be working with Carrie again. At the city of Tukwila as the deputy city administrator, I like to call myself the chief bottle washer, and I sort of did everything. So really pleased of all of the work that I was a part of on the equity side of things that led to some statewide and national awards for the city of Tukwila, as well as some little projects I built, like a couple of fire stations and a justice center. So those are a couple of bookends. There's a lot in between. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to meeting all of you more and getting to know the community better. So thank you.
When are you going on vacation, Scott? Yeah. All right, does anyone else have anything? All right. Councilmember Treen?
I didn't have my hand up.
No, I always call on you.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thanks, everybody.